Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financials Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today I have Victor, who is also senior consultant. And today we are handling accounts payables lesson 27. Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to this lesson in our Oracle Financials Functional Training series. We are going to continue from where we left off in our previous session. In our previous session, we saw how to enter prepayments in payables. We saw that we enter them as we would a normal invoice. Difference being that we select that this is a prepayment in the invoice type instead of a standard invoice. We also saw how to pay a prepayment. Basically, we go to the payments screen. We can go from the invoice workbench, or we can go to the payments screen directly, and we cut a check for this prepayment as we would a normal invoice. Okay. So we did these two first steps. We also talked about the accounting that is involved with all of these steps. So we are going to proceed from there, and we are going to see what happens once we receive an invoice from the vendor, and we are going to see what happens or how to apply the prepayment to that particular invoice. Just to clarify, the prepayment, we talked about this, is entered as a normal invoice and therefore is associated with a particular vendor, specifically a supplier site, right? So anytime we are entering an invoice, when you press the option to apply a prepayment, then those prepayments that are available under that supplier site will be available to you to apply to that particular invoice. Okay. And we're also going to see that the other way to look at it is that if you select a prepayment and you want to apply it, then the system will give you all the invoices tied to that particular supplier site and the ones which have not been paid, to which you can apply that prepayment. Okay. So actually in those few last explanations, we have explained the two ways in which you can apply a prepayment. You can go from the invoice, and when you select the invoice, then available prepayments will be shown to you, and you can pick one to apply to that invoice. Or you can query a prepayment, and when you query that prepayment and say you want to apply it, then the invoices which have not been paid will be shown to you, to which you can apply that prepayment. Okay. So we're also going to see that at play in the system. So the other thing about prepayments we can talk about is that you can apply one prepayment to multiple invoices. Okay. So supposing you have two invoices, each of $40, so total $80, but they're two separate invoices, and both of them tied to the same supplier site. Okay. And you have a system, you have a prepayment under that supplier also for $80. So you can apply 40 to one invoice and 40 to the other invoice from that single prepayment. You can also enter multiple prepayments to a single invoice. So for example, you have an invoice of $80 and you have two prepayments of $40, and all those documents are tied to the same supplier. So you can apply those two prepayments to that single invoice of $80, and you will not have to pay anything. So it can go either way. We can basically say the relationship is many to many. So you can apply one prepayment to multiple invoices, or you can apply multiple prepayments to a single invoice. So we are going to head on over to Oracle, and we are going to see how to apply a prepayment. And remember, we are still dealing with permanent temporary prepayments. So not sure whether this is okay. So we go to, I'm already logged in, so I'll just go to invoices, entry, invoice batches. So we have this batch here that says prepayment test. And this is where we entered our prepayment. You can see here the type is prepayment. Under the status, you can see available, which means this prepayment is available to be applied to an invoice. Okay. So what do you do if you want to apply this prepayment to an invoice? So this is the prepayment page. So if you travel from this page of this prepayment and you go to actions, then apply or unapply prepayment, then select OK. So what have you done? You have a prepayment and you've selected the option to apply or unapply. So what the system will do is it will bring the invoices which are unpaid, or the amounts which are unpaid, because you can have more than one scheduled payment under an invoice, and it will ask you whether you want to apply this prepayment to those invoices. Okay, so for example, our prepayment is $40, of which we have not used any amount. So we can select this apply under this line, and this amount will be applied to invoice number MJ test. Okay, or we can not apply to that, and we can apply to this one, and it will be applied to this MJ test number 3 instead, and both of them are for 150. The other option we have is to apply different amounts. So we can say we want to apply 20 here, and we want to apply, you cannot enter. Okay, so let me reduce this first. Okay, let me unapply this first. Oh boy, so it won't let me. So let me put 20, then try to unapply. I'll just close this page. So I just close the page, and let's go to actions again. Apply prepayment. Okay, so we went from the prepayment, and when we go for the prepayment, the options that are provided for us are the invoices to which we can apply the prepayment. Okay, and we saw how to do that. So we can select apply here and select to enter $20. Okay, save. Okay, and we can apply the rest, the remaining 20, and save this. Oh, what did I press? And save. Okay, so 20 has been applied to this invoice MJ test, and another 20 has been applied to this other invoice for a total of 40. And you can see the prepayment amount remaining is 40. Okay. From this page, you can go ahead and also unapply. You can unapply both of them, and you are back with your prepayment amount of $40. You have this option here which says print. So when you say print, what is submitted is a remittance advice. Remember when we talked about remittance advice? So one is produced for the prepayment, and you can attach it to your check when you're sending your check. Okay, and you can say that, oh, we applied this prepayment that we had paid to you to this invoice that you sent us, and that is why the check is for this amount. Okay, and what you can put there is the name and the title and the phone of the person who is sending this check or cutting this check. All right. So we have gone from the prepayment screen. What happens when you go from the invoice screen? So let's take this invoice, for example, hold test 2, go to invoices. So this one has been paid. Let's look at this one. No payment under this one, so amount paid is 0. Okay, so this is one of the ones that we were looking at, the MJ test. Okay. Now, if you want to apply a prepayment to this, it says it needs revalidation, but as you are going to see, applying a prepayment does not require validation. So you can apply a prepayment even to an invoice that has not yet been validated. But let's validate it. So it has been validated. Okay. So if you want to apply a prepayment to an invoice, we go to Actions from the invoice screen. So this is a standard invoice, and we want to apply a prepayment. So what happens? On the other path, when we go from the prepayment, we are provided invoices to which we can apply the prepayment. If we go from the invoice, we are provided with prepayments which we can apply to the invoice. Okay, so we only have one prepayment available. So you can pick to apply that prepayment. You are also allowed to pick the amount. Okay, you have this button here that says prepayment on invoice. Depending on the vendor and maybe the ERP software that they're using, the invoice that they send you might have taken into consideration this prepayment okay? Because these guys know that you have paid them a prepayment, you sent them a check already. So when they send you this invoice, or when they send you an invoice, maybe they can say that we know that we already have a prepayment, and so we are only charging you the balance. So if that is the case, then you can indicate here that the prepayment is already on the invoice. Okay. So if the prepayment is already on the invoice, then the what is on the invoice is already the balance. So the prepayment, well, you will apply the prepayment in the system, okay, but the balance will not be affected for the invoice. However, if the prepayment was not on the invoice, then the prepayment that you apply would be subtracted from that total of the invoice, okay? So for example, if prepayment is not on this invoice and we apply, then we will be paying 110. But if the prepayment is already on the invoice and we select prepayment on invoice, then we'll still pay 150, because this means the total was 190. The other thing here is that you can see this line number column. Okay, so your prepayments might have different distributions, okay, or different lines. So for example, if this is a prepayment of 40, it may have 2 lines of 20 each, and you can pick to apply one line and not the other. But since ours has only one line, then it's the only thing that we see here. Okay, so if you want to apply this invoice to this, we want to apply this prepayment to this invoice, then we can just save this work, and the whole amount will be applied, and you can see the invoice amount that is unpaid goes to 110, because we have applied $40 of prepayment. So, excuse me. Okay, so I have unapplied. If we apply and we select this prepayment on invoice, okay, and we save, the amount unpaid remains 150, even though we have applied. You can see here existing prepayment applications. Even though we have applied the prepayment, the unpaid amount remains 150 because we selected this prepayment on invoice option. So that's what I was talking about. So let's we can unapply this. So we have the invoice and we have seen how to apply the prepayment. Okay, let's remind ourselves of the accounting. We know the accounting for the invoice. We debit our expense and we credit our liabilities. We debit our expense account to increase our expense, and we credit our liabilities to increase our payables, okay? We apply prepayment, we credit our prepayment account to reduce that prepayment, and we debit our liabilities. That amount which you saw, which went from 150 to 110, that is the reducing of the liability. Okay, we reduce our liability by 40. When we pay the balance of the invoice, what happens? We reduce our liability completely as concerns that invoice, and we also we credit our cash because we are writing a check. Okay, so that's just the accounting. So what we are going to do now is we are going to go and apply this prepayment to an invoice and then pay that invoice. So you can decide whichever way you want to go. We can go prepayment. So we are going from the prepayment on my end. So go to actions, apply prepayment. Okay. What will you get? You will get the list of invoices with the amount unpaid to which you can apply this. So let's choose to apply to this MJ test. Okay. You can say maybe you want to print a remittance advice, and we can say this is maybe Jane payables or something. You can say accountant, and we can say phone number 999-000-1111. Okay. So if we apply, we expect this to go down to 110. Perhaps it goes without saying, but you have noticed that. So if we go from this prepayment page, it is assumed that the prepayment is not on this invoice. Okay, so the unpaid amount will be reduced if you apply that invoice. So we have applied our invoice. We have applied our prepayment, and it says here status fully applied. So this is the remittance or report. Well, I guess nothing is showing here. That's weird. Okay, it says no error, but I believe it's because maybe we haven't put a format for this. Okay, but that's fine. A remittance report should have been displayed showing the details of that prepayment and also those user details that we put in, the name, the title, and the phone number. So we have applied this prepayment. We still have to go and cut a check for that invoice to which we applied the prepayment. I believe it was Mascani Hold Test 3, not that one, looks like Mascani Hold Test 1, yeah. Okay, as you can see, amount paid, it says 40. Remember, we already cut a check for this prepayment. So technically, actually, in real sense, we have paid this 40. It's just that we had not applied it to an invoice in the system. Okay, so we did cut a check for this amount and send it to the vendor. We just applied it to an invoice, and then now what we are going to do is to pay this unpaid amount, 110. Okay, and you can see prepayments applied is 40. So first, let's validate this. So that we can holds invoice amount. So looks like there is a hole here. Let's take care of, let's see, release. So we have this quick release and we can use it. So I believe we had put maybe a hold, an invoice limit in our previous session that we didn't take care of, but we have taken care of it. So it says validated and no holds. Okay, so we can go to actions now and pay this in full. If we go from the invoice workbench, then some of these details are pre-populated. You can enter the system date here. Bank account, you can see the payment amount is 150 minus prepayment. Payment method is check, yes. Payment document is Mascani in combination with Mascani check payment process profile. That's the document number. And that's it. So you see the payment that has been done is 110. This is the payment instruction. It should be a check for 110. So if we had a remittance report that worked, then we would have sent this together with the check and would say the reason, we know the invoice is for 150, but we've paid 110 because of the prepayment as shown in that remittance report. Okay. So this is what we expected to have, those details, but it did not. But you can see the check is for 110. The invoice number is here so that they can compare if they need to. So we've paid the balance of the invoice. We have credited cash, and we have reduced all our liabilities. Okay. So we have learned how to apply a temporary prepayment, and that should do it for this session. Bob, unless you have something to add.
Thank you, Victor.
All right, thank you.